Billboards cost money. Big billboards, the kind you plaster across 4 states, cost serious money. And yet, across Lagos, Kebbi, Rivers and Delta, Nigerians are tearing them down, booing them, defacing them, right out in the open, in broad daylight. Now, here's what nobody is asking. If a sitting president's own billboards can't survive on the streets of Lagos, his political home base, what does that tell us about what's actually happening on the ground? Because this isn't a protest in Abuja. This isn't opposition territory. This is Lagos. This is the Southwest. This is supposed to be APC country. So stay with me, because what these billboards reveal about Nigeria's political temperature right now is something the press briefings are not telling you. Before we go deeper, if you're just finding Naija Newsfeed, welcome. This channel exists to break down what's really happening in Nigerian politics without the noise, without the spin. And I'll be honest with you, I'm doing this because you subscribed. Every subscriber tells me this work matters. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do it now, because that's the only way you can help me keep doing this. No ads, no sponsors running my mouth, just you, me, and the facts. Subscribe and let's get into this. Let's set the scene properly. In recent weeks, videos and images have circulated across Nigerian social media, showing what can only be described as coordinated public rage at President Bola Tinubu's campaign billboards and branding materials. This wasn't isolated to one city. Reports and footage came in from Lagos, the president's political stronghold, from Kebbi State in the northwest, from Rivers State in the south-south, and from Delta State. 4 geopolitically distinct states, same message. What triggered it? The answer is layered, but the immediate catalyst based on what's circulating is the convergence of ongoing economic hardship with what many Nigerians see as a disconnect between government messaging and their daily reality. When you put up a billboard celebrating your first or second year in office, and the person standing in front of that billboard can't afford a bag of rice, the billboard becomes a provocation. This is also coming at a politically sensitive moment. The 2027 general election cycle is already quietly beginning. Tinubu is expected to seek re-election. So the question of his political standing, particularly in the south-south and the north, is very live right now. And these billboard incidents are the most visible, visceral signal yet of what the polling data may or may not be showing behind closed doors. Now, let's understand the structure around this. Under Nigerian law, destroying public or private property, including political billboards, is a criminal offense. It doesn't matter whether you agree with the person on the billboard or not. The destruction of campaign material or government branding can attract charges under the Criminal Code Act or state criminal statutes. But here's where it gets interesting. Who owns those billboards? Some billboards are placed by the APC as a party, some are placed by state governments, some are placed by business interests, contractors, and political associates of the president, sometimes through state government channels, sometimes through private funds. This matters because it affects who bears the cost and who has standing to press charges. The police have the power to arrest anyone caught in the act, but in Nigeria, we've seen time and again that political will determines whether arrests are actually made. There's also a gray area around public protest. The Constitution guarantees freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. Courts have had to balance these rights against property law before, and it is never clean-cut. What we also know is that the Directorate of State Services, the SSS, monitors civil unrest closely. When billboard destruction becomes a nationwide pattern, it crosses from a local enforcement matter into a national security and intelligence concern. This is where it gets real. Who benefits from this situation? First and most obviously, the opposition. Whether it's the PDP, Labour Party, or any emerging 2027 challenger, footage of Nigerians tearing down Tinubu billboards is worth more than any campaign advert. It's organic, it's emotional, and it travels fast on social media. Peter Obi's Labour Party supporters are watching this closely. The PDP, currently internally fractured, will use this as evidence that Tinubu is losing the streets. But here's the nuance. Some of the beneficiaries might be within APC itself. Nigeria's political terrain has never been straightforward. There are factions within the ruling party that would love nothing more than to replace Tinubu as the 2027 APC candidate, or to leverage his weakened position to extract more concessions in terms of ministerial appointments, state resources, and party positioning. So, when you see these videos, don't just ask who's burning the billboard. Ask who is filming it, who is sharing it, and who is making sure it goes viral. Who stands to lose? The presidency loses narrative control. One of the key assets of any incumbent is the ability to project strength and popularity. Billboards are literally a projection of presence. When those billboards are being torn down and the images are trending, the counter-narrative, Nigerians love their president, becomes impossible to sell. Electoral implications. The most critical number right now isn't GDP or inflation. It's the voter registration demographic. Young Nigerians who drove the obedient movement in 2022 were watching how this government has performed against its promises. The removal of fuel subsidy, Tinubu's most consequential and controversial first-term decision, hit this demographic hard. A generation that was already economically frustrated is now economically strained. Those are the same hands pulling down those billboards. Regional breakdown. Lagos. This is where the symbolism is sharpest. Lagos is Tinubu's base. It is where his political machine was built, where his loyalists run the state government, where his electoral legitimacy originates. Lagosians expected returns for supporting one of their own. When those returns don't come, the backlash is personal. Kebbi. This is northwest Nigeria, historically aligned with APC and the Buhari political tradition. If Tinubu is losing ground here, it signals that the North-South coalition that elected him in 2023 is fraying. This is critical for 2027. Rivers. Rivers State is its own political universe right now, given the ongoing conflict between Governor Simila Ifubara and the FCT Minister Nyesom Wike, both products of the same political machine. Rivers State is already deeply volatile. Billboard incidents here feed into a broader picture of federal government unpopularity in the South-South. Delta. Delta is traditionally PDP territory. Tinubu's billboards being attacked here is less surprising, but the intensity and visibility matters. The silent players. Watch for state governors, particularly those eyeing their own presidential ambitions, who are conspicuously quiet about these incidents. Their silence is a signal of strategic positioning. Watch also for APC party chairmen at the state level. If they are not aggressively defending the president's image, that tells you something about which way the wind is blowing internally. Now, if what I just broke down surprises you, drop a comment below. Tell me, do you think what's happening on those streets is organic anger, or is it being organized by someone with a political agenda? I want your honest take before we get to the part that changes the whole picture. Zoom out for a second. What these billboard incidents represent at a national level is something more serious than vandalism. They are a form of political temperature measurement, and the reading right now is running hot. Federal-state dynamics. The fact that this is happening across states with different governors, different political leanings, and different geopolitical identities tells us that this discontent is not being manufactured by a single political actor in a single state. It is broad, and the federal government will need to either respond to it through policy relief or attempt to suppress it through the security apparatus. Neither option is clean. Economic consequences. Investor confidence tracks political stability. Foreign direct investment into Nigeria is already constrained by currency volatility and regulatory unpredictability. Widespread visible civil discontent adds another layer of risk perception. For ordinary Nigerians, the more immediate concern is whether this political noise will distract the government from the economic reforms that people are being asked to endure pain for. If the reform is real, the government needs to stay focused. Right now, the optics suggest it may be bracing for political damage control instead. Security angle. In a country where ethnic and religious fault lines are never far from the surface, public anger that spreads across multiple regions simultaneously needs to be monitored carefully. The concern is not the billboard destruction itself, it's what escalation could look like if economic conditions worsen heading into 2027. History shows that in Nigeria,
Political discontent and security deterioration are not unconnected. There's a genuine international dimension here worth mentioning, but briefly. Western governments and multilateral institutions that deal with Nigeria are tracking the Tinubu administration's economic reform program. The IMF and World Bank, for example, broadly endorsed the removal of the fuel subsidy as economically necessary, but their models don't factor in the street-level political consequences. The UK and US governments care about stability in Nigeria, both because of significant diaspora communities and because of Nigeria's outsized role in West African security and geopolitics. For Nigerians in the diaspora, particularly those sending remittances home, this is personal. The naira remains weak, transfers are losing value on the receiving end, and many Nigerian diaspora Nigerians who supported or were cautiously optimistic about Tinubu in 2023 are now recalibrating. The international signal from these billboard incidents isn't coup incoming, it's more subtle than that. It's a warning that reform without political communication strategy creates its own instability risk.
Let me play devil's advocate, because it's important to be honest here. What are people getting wrong? Some commentators are reading these incidents as proof that Tinubu has completely lost the country. That's an overcorrection. Billboards being torn down is a powerful symbol, but symbols are not polling data. Nigeria is a country of 220 million people across 36 states. Viral videos from 4 states do not tell you the full national picture. There are still Nigerians, particularly in parts of the country that have benefited from specific federal interventions, who hold a more complicated view of this administration. Infrastructure projects, for example, continue in some states. Not everyone who voted APC feels betrayed. The strongest counter-argument from the government side. The Tinubu administration would argue, and their spokespersons have argued, that the economic pain Nigerians are experiencing is the necessary consequence of inheriting a broken economy. That subsidy removal was inevitable, that inflation was imported and global, that structural reform is generationally painful before it is generationally beneficial. There is some economic truth in this framing, but here's where it falls apart. Political trust is not built on technical correctness, it's built on perceived fairness and shared sacrifice. When petrol prices rise but government officials still ride convoys of SUVs, when electricity bills increase but blackouts continue, the reform narrative collapses on the street, regardless of its macroeconomic validity. What narratives don't hold up? The idea that these protests are purely ethnic or regional, it's just Igbo people, it's just PDP states, doesn't survive a look at the geography. Lagos is Yoruba majority, Kebbi is Hausa majority. This cuts across ethnic lines, and that's significant. So what happens next? Here's what to watch. Most likely next moves. The presidency will likely attempt to respond through a combination of strategic communication, repackaging the economic narrative, and targeted policy announcements designed to signal responsiveness. Watch for any announcement around food pricing, electricity tariffs, or transport subsidies in the weeks ahead. The APC will move to manage internal dissent by co-opting potential challengers ahead of any 2027 primary process. Expect governor meetings and behind-closed-doors conversations. Signals of escalation to watch. If these billboard incidents move from social media into sustained street protests with organized leadership, that's when the calculation changes dramatically. If prominent APC governors, Lagos, Ogun, and Enugu, begin to publicly distance themselves from the presidency, that's a 5-alarm political warning. If the SSS begins making arrests related to billboard destruction and the arrests go public, watch for the backlash to intensify rather than cool. Best case scenario. The government delivers visible relief on at least one major cost of living pressure point, fuel, food, or electricity before the end of the year. The narrative shifts. The president demonstrates political intelligence by getting ahead of the anger. Worst case scenario. The government defaults to suppression and messaging rather than substantive change. Discontent deepens through 2026. 2027 becomes a genuinely contested and potentially destabilizing election. Long-term impact if nothing changes. Nigeria's presidential incumbency is not a guarantee of re-election. Buhari won his second term in difficult circumstances, but the political terrain today is different. The protest vote has been demonstrated to exist and to be organizable. If that energy finds a champion before 2027, this administration has a real fight on its hands. Let's come back to where we started. I asked you, if a sitting president's own billboards can't survive on the streets of Lagos, his home base, what does that tell us? Here's my honest answer. It tells us that in Nigeria right now, economic frustration has overcome political loyalty, and that is a rare and serious thing. Patron-client relationships in Nigerian politics are deep-rooted. When those bonds begin to snap, when the base of your political base starts removing your face from the streets, you are not just losing popularity, you are losing the architecture of political power. This isn't the end of the Tinubu presidency, but it is a clear signal that the street-level contract between this government and the Nigerian people is under serious strain. Whether this administration chooses to hear that signal or dismiss it as opposition noise will determine a great deal about what Nigeria looks like heading into 2027. That's my take. What's yours? If this breakdown gave you clarity on what's really going on in Nigeria right now, do me a favor, share this video with one person who needs to hear it, not because of views, because this conversation matters. And subscribe to Naija Newsfeed. I want to be direct with you. This channel only grows when you grow it. No algorithm is going to push this content to people who need it. You are the algorithm. Every subscribe, every share, every comment tells me to keep going. So if you want more of this, the real breakdown, no spin, no bias, just honest analysis, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Stay sharp.